turn to Melinda Haring. She's the Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council's Eurasia Center. Melinda, thanks so much for joining us. These are obviously big allegations by the United States. Not the first time, as mentioned. How would they go about proving that these chemical weapons have in fact been used?
Hi, Jean-Emile. So we've seen the Ukrainians make these accusations for months now. Ukrainian soldiers have been complaining that they have burns in their mouths and that they also have burns on their faces. So I think that this is the announcement by the State Department has been in the making for months and months. The State Department has been working with the Ukrainian side to get enough evidence in order to support this claim. And if you notice that the statement that the State Department put out yesterday was very firm. It said that this is not an isolated incident. They've seen many incidents like this. So they have a lot of evidence to come out with the statement that they put out yesterday.
And of course, taking such a strong stance against the dangers of chloropicrine, that's the chemical they allege has been used. How dangerous is it on the front lines for those Ukrainian soldiers if it is being used?
So it's dangerous. It's prohibited by international treaties. But I think more significantly, it says something about the Russian side and where they are in terms of the war. So in that statement you put up from the State Department, the Washington is saying Moscow is annoyed that it can't get Kiev, that it can't force the soldiers out of these defensive fortifications. So they're now turning to banned chemical weapons. So Moscow is using illegal, it doesn't have any other, it's tried every sort of conventional way to make the Ukrainians move. And they're out of ideas, so they're turning to chemical weapons. It shows sort of how desperate Moscow is to try to change the military means on the ground. But
its desperation means it is finding a way to make these weapons if these allegations turn out to be true. And in order to do so, it would require companies' assistance, mining companies. Now, the US says it will be sanctioning what it believes are to be those mining companies. They're not necessarily in Russia that are helping the Russian forces with these weapons. Do we have any more information as of yet who they could be?
So, Jean-Emile, the package of sanctions that came out is pretty large. It's about 280 different organizations. And a couple of things stick out. I think this may be a pretty effective package. The State Department is looking for sanctions evaders. So it's hitting different companies in Turkey, in Kyrgyzstan, which has been a problem, in Malaysia. And it's also aimed at the Chinese. And if you dig through a lot of the information around the sanctions package, the State Department has said that if we were able to really tighten sanctions on the PRC on China, it would make it incredibly hard for Russia to continue to prosecute the war. The Russian side has been getting almost all their drones, their pieces from China. So this is an attempt to squeeze and to try to prevent that from happening.
Well, I want to follow on from that because it's very important how these sanctions actually can prove to be effective. Do you see them being effective? If they're looking to actually punish Russia for this act, is sanctioning the right way to go?
Jean-Emile, sanctions are not perfect. They don't change behavior, but they make it more difficult for Russia to continue the war. So, yes. And I think that you have to look at it in the context. The United States Congress has finally put a package together, the weapons package that the Ukrainians have been begging for months and months and months. And you and I have talked many times about the rationing that the Ukrainians face on the front lines. So as the United States and the West surges up military might on the front lines, it is definitely appropriate to surge with sanctions as well.
And now, obviously, then the question goes to those same components that you've just mentioned that are helping in weapons and other military items in Russia. They create them using components, and oftentimes that is from the West itself. How does the United States, how does Europe then target maybe its own companies, which through third countries, those weapons and possibly now in this case, mining and chemicals are reaching Russia?
So this is not an easy thing to keep your finger on. The sanctions lists have to be constantly updated. And finding ways to eliminate sanctions evaders is really important. but also just being on top of the behavior of companies. So the target is always changing. In the State Department and the Treasury Department, both in the United States and in Western countries, have to keep those sanctions lists active and keep updating them.
So just a final follow-up question. How do you see this playing out now in terms of any kind of immediate response, at least directly from the United States to Russia or the West at large?
So Russia has denied the claims, but look, this is typical Russian behavior. We've seen them use chemical weapons in Britain. We've seen them use chemical weapons on their own people with Alexei Navalny. So in some senses, this is terrible, ugly behavior, but it's predictable. I think that the West is going to continue to ratchet up the pressure with sanctions and with weapons. And I think that Russia has finally seen that the West is serious when it says we will be with Ukraine for as long as it takes.
An interesting thought there. Melinda, thanks so much for just opening our eyes into this situation. That's Melinda Haring. She's the Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council's Eurasia Center, and talking all about those accusations of Russia using chemical weapons in Ukraine. Well, turning now to